Hello everyone, welcome to this session on documentation and visualization. This session is part of Module 6 of Data Science, course code CS466. I am Dr. Renu Mary Daniel, Assistant Professor, Department of CSE RSET. Once again, welcome to this session. The agenda of this session is as follows. Initially, we will discuss the need for reproducible documents. Then we will see how to create R Markdown using the knitr package. We will also create LaTeX documents in R using knitr package and Sweep. Then we will see how to write effective comments in a scientific article. Subsequently, we will discuss how to exercise version control and maintain history of our projects, specifically our projects using GitHub. Finally, we will see various deployment models in R. After a researcher finishes his or her research work, he or she will start preparing a scientific article documenting the research work, which will hopefully get published in a reputed journal or conference. When a research article is submitted to a journal, authors today have to export their manuscript as a Word or LaTeX document. You might have had a small exposure to this process while preparing your project reports. The report has a set format. First, you have to write the abstract, then introduction, related work, followed by research gaps or motivation, contribution, proofs, experimental analysis, results, and discussion. In the manuscript, often the code is stripped from the data and is included in the appendix. So, as quoted by a professor in Rutgers University, these days data trails are often a morass of separate data, results, and code files in which no one knows which results were derived from which raw data using which code files. Research methods are not generally described in sufficient detail to allow other researchers to faithfully repeat key experiments without engaging the original authors. When a research article is submitted to a journal, authors today have to export their manuscript in a flattened format, often Word or PDF, or submit it in LaTeX. This process strips code from being embedded into the narrative of the research into a separate asset. What started as a self-contained, fully reproducible document is transformed into a collection of linked assets. Here in this slide you can see an example for a reproducible document. In a reproducible document, the code will be interleaved with the comments, explanation, the data, graphs, and results. And anybody who gets this reproducible document can execute it on the same data to get the same results as well as graphs. Contrary to a typical research article, a reproducible document is one where any code used by the original researcher to compute an output is embedded within the narrative describing the work. Reproducible document formats like R Markdown and Jupyter Notebooks help researchers organize both data and code into an understandable workflow, which improves documentation for the authors themselves, makes it faster to build on previous work when new data becomes available, aids collaboration, training, and reproducibility. The key to producing R Markdown documents is the knitr package. The purpose of knitr is to produce reproducible work. When you distribute your work in knitr format, anyone can download your work and without great effort, rerun it to confirm that they get the same results as you did. This is the ideal standard of scientific research, but is rarely met as scientists usually are deficient in sharing all of their code, data, and actual procedures. knitr collects and automates all these steps, so it becomes obvious if something is missing or doesn't actually work as claimed. If you keep your code as a separate file and the output screenshots are saved separately, there are chances that when the code gets modified, the document containing the output also gets out of sync. Further, datasets might get modified too. knitr embeds data, code, results, and documentation into a single markdown file which is entirely reproducible. So the major maintenance tasks done by knitr are: it keeps code in sync with documentation, it keeps results in sync with data, and helps us to hand off correct work to others. This is an example of a simple R Markdown file. We will see the detailed steps of how to create a .rmd file in R in the subsequent slide. Here we'll just familiarize the structure of an R Markdown file. Specifically, I'll be talking about how to create a nittar chunk, how to write code within that, how to write markdown text, etc. So we'll see the detailed steps of how to create this. You don't need to worry about that. So you can see that in the first step, in the first line, we have written hash symbol nittar markdown example. Now whatever follows hash and space will be a heading. So this is the first main heading of the document. When you knit it, you can knit it to either a PDF file, HTML file, or a Word file. So that output file will have a main heading symbol nittar markdown example. Suppose you want to create a subheading, then you have to give double hash. If you want to create a subheading, then you must give triple hash, and so on. So this is a markdown text, and next you have the next markdown text, two examples followed by star plotting and star calculating, which means that first we'll do a plotting, next we'll do a calculation, and then we start with plot example. So all these things are just text, markdown text, which helps the reader who sees this markdown file to understand what is happening within this document. So these are all markdown text. It has nothing to do with the code. Next, you can see that there are three symbols which are very similar to single quotes. That is called backtick. Now you can find this backtick symbol on the same key where you find the tilde symbol on the left hand side top of your keyboard. Just beneath the escape key, you can see a button with the tilde symbol. So that will have the symbol called backtick. Now backtick, you have to put 3 backticks to start a nittar chunk. All the code in R should be written within this nittar chunk. So you can start a nittar chunk using 3 backticks followed by curly braces, open curly braces, R and name of that chunk. So here in this case the name of the chunk is plot example, because first we are going to do a plotting. So they have named it conveniently as plot example. Then this naming part and all is entirely optional. You can even leave it by writing R and closing the curly braces. So here they are plotting a figure, so they are mentioning the figure width, figure height and alignment. All these things are optional assignments. So once you have done that, you can close it, the curly braces. Next, within that R chunk, you can write the code. Here we are loading the library ggplot2, and we are using ggplot function to plot a figure. After that, we are closing the chunk, the nittar chunk, using 3 backticks. So whatever you write within those backticks forms the R code. So after closing the nittar chunk, again you are writing a markdown text, that is calculation example. So once you have written calculation example, then again you are starting another R code chunk called calc example. Within that we are doing a calculation pi square. So this is a simple R markdown file. So this slide shows the execution result of the markdown file in the previous slide. So if you execute the markdown file in the previous slide, you might get 3 different kinds of documents. Either it will be an HTML file, or it can be a PDF file, or it can even be a Word file based on the option that you are giving. So if you press the knit option, suppose you are getting an HTML file, this will be the output. So first you can see symbol nittar markdown example, that will be the heading. So remember that was written with hash, indicating that this is the main heading. So nittar has automatically formatted it in bold and with larger font size. Next you have 2 examples, plotting, calculating, followed by plot example, that which is part of the R markdown text. This is for the understanding of any reader who goes through this file. They will understand that there are 2 different codes. One is for plotting and the one is for some calculation. So after that you have an R code. Remember, this R code was given in the R code chunk. It was given in the nittar chunk, and we had named it, and we had given the optional assignments, how to center it, what are its alignments and everything. So similarly, based on that, nittar has aligned it, and the figure width and height has been set accordingly. and if you notice, the code is printed in a different font, so it is visibly different from the other markdown text. So after that, you have, after the code, we have the result of the execution of that code. So it has plotted a graph as the result of the code, which has been indicated with the green circle. So again, we had a documentation called calculation example. So after that, we had started another R code chunk for doing the calculation. We had done pi into pi star pi. So that is given as an R code. Next, we have the result of the corresponding code. So this is how your resulting R markdown file will look like. So this is how an R markdown file looks like. So on the left hand side, you can see the initial .rmd file that we discussed first. In the .rmd file, that is R markdown file, in that file first we'll write the documentation. Remember, we had written hash, then heading, then we had written some text. So that all that forms the documentation chunk. After that, within the nitar chunk, we had written the R code. So that is the R code chunk. Again, we had written some documentation followed by R code, again documentation, and so on. So when you execute it, you will get either a PDF file or an HTML file or a Word file. So this in this output file, if you notice, the documentation chunk will be printed as it is, except for the fact that the heading will be formatted accordingly with the proper size and bold and so on. Subheading, if you print, that will also be accordingly printed. Next, for R code chunk, remember that R code chunk is always pretty printed. That is, there will be some font that will be used to highlight the R code, and it will be different from, always different and distinct from the documentation chunk. In the output file, the R code chunk will be followed by the execution result. If it is a plot, then corresponding graph will appear next. If it is a calculation, the calculation result will appear next in the output file. After that, again the documentation will appear, followed by the R code chunk. Then if R code chunk is printed, next one will definitely be the execution result, followed by documentation chunk. So this is how the initial R markdown file, which can either be .rmd markdown format or .rnw for LaTeX format. We'll see both of them in detail. So now we'll start creating a .rmd file, which is a markdown file. To do that, open RStudio, go to File, New File, and choose the option R markdown. Now you can see a window like this appearing, which will prompt you to enter the title as well as the author name. So automatically the author name is filled in, my name has been filled in, and you can type in the title of your document. And that's also optional. If you don't type in, it will, or by default it will take the title as untitled. Now the default output format will be an HTML document. If you want your output format to be PDF or Word, you can choose it accordingly. So I am going with HTML and I'll be clicking OK. So after you do that, an untitled R markdown file will open, and in that you have to type in the contents, that is the documentation chunk and the code chunk. I'll show you what to key in the next slides. So after you type in everything, the documentation chunk and the code chunk, you have to save it using save as option. Save the document as, give a file name. After that, if you hit OK, the file will automatically be assigned .rmd extension and it will be saved. So this is the procedure to create a .rmd or an R markdown file. So in my R markdown file, I'll be doing k-means clustering, and I'll be writing the code, the comments and graphs for doing k-means clustering. If you remember, for doing k-means clustering, we had used a data set of milk samples of different mammals, and it was in library cluster.datasets, and we had loaded a data set in that library called all.mammals.milk 1956, and I am loading that data. After that, this all.mammals.milk will be loaded into a data frame called df. After that, if you notice, I am loading a package called digest. So here in this slide, what we are doing is we are going to check the data provenance of a data set. That is, we are going to check the integrity of this data set. So this step will help you when you create your R Markdown file. This is entirely optional. So what we are doing is, each time another researcher is loading your R Markdown file, automatically we are going to write the steps so that the person who is doing it can be sure that the data set's integrity is maintained. So we'll initially hash this data frame all.mammals.milk, that is df, the data frame df, the contents of that we are going to hash it, and we'll get a hash value. And each time our R Markdown is loading the data set, we'll be checking whether the hash value at that point of time matches with the hash value, this hash value that we are computing initially. So the fourth code is library digest. So that package contains algorithms like SHA-1, MD5, SHA-2, etc. You can use these algorithms to find the hash values. So after you load the library digest, we are going to convert each of the values in the data frame to character. So that is as.character data frame. If you print that, actually you will get many rows. I have just pasted 2 rows here. So the initial row consists of the header, that is horse, orangutan, monkey. Each of that will be converted to character. Similarly, the first row, that is line number 2, that row is also converted to character. So similarly, all the entire data in that data frame will be converted to character. Now we are going to find the digest of as.character df, and we are going to use algorithm SHA-1. You can use any algorithm, you can use MD5, SHA-2, etc. So if you do that, you will get a hash value. This hash value will be taken as the initial hash value, so that when we create a markdown file, each time we can check the hash value at that point of time with this particular hash value. So this is how you check the data provenance of a data set. So this is my R Markdown file. I have named it as sample.rmd. If you notice, this is the name of the file, sample.rmd. And I have given the title as k-means clustering example. So the name, I had changed the untitled to k-means clustering example. Then the author name is my name, date is the date in which this document was created. Then output format is HTML. So since I have given the title as k-means clustering example, that will be printed as the main title of my document. In line number 10, you can see that I have given a subtitle, loading data and packages. So that will be printed as a subheading in your output .html file. So I have given double hash space loading data and packages. So that is a subheading. So these are all part of the R Markdown text. Next, to load the data and packages, we need to write the R code. So remember, R code will always be written within the R code chunk. So to create an R code chunk, in line number 12, we have written 3 backticks followed by curly braces. Then R, after that, name of this particular R code chunk is load. Then within that R code chunk, I am writing 3 lines of R code. First line is library cluster.datasets. I am loading the library. Then I am loading the data all.mammals.milk. I want to print the head of all.mammal.milk. That is the first 5 or 6 lines. I want the user who is executing this file to see the output, so that they will understand on what data we are working on. So after this, I am closing the first R code chunk using 3 backticks, that is line number 16. So this much is highlighted by R Markdown.rmd file in grey color. If you notice, from 12 to 16, the R code chunk is highlighted with grey color, grey background. Next, I am starting my next subheading, that is in line number 18, checking data provenance. After that, again, to check the data provenance, we have to write R code itself. So again, in line number 20, I am starting an R code chunk named PROV for checking the provenance with 3 backticks. First line is I am loading library digest, because we know that we have to use the function digest and the algorithm SHA-1. So I am loading that digest. And in H1, that is line number 22, remember that we had initially hashed this data set, and we got the hash value as F4, FF, 686, etc. that particular value is stored in H1. Next, I'm printing check that the date in which this particular RMD file is executed. So that date will be current date and time will be printed in line number 23 when you execute this. Next, in line number 24, we are loading all.mammals.milk, that particular data set, into a data frame called DF. Then in line number 25, we are computing the digest of as.character DF using algorithm SHA-1, and that hash value H1 will be checked with the initial hash value that hash value H2 will be checked with the initial hash value H1 using the function identical. Notice in line 26 we are using a function identical H1 H2, and we are putting it inside stop if not. So if the value is not true, then the execution of RMD file sample will be halted and we will get an error message. If it is true, then the remaining code or document chunks will be executed. So this is how we check the provenance of a data set. So here in this line again we have the continuation of the sample.rmd file. So in line number 28 we have an R markdown text execution continues since both the hashes are equivalent. So this part will be printed only if both the hashes are equivalent and the stop if not function does not throw any error. So to show that it doesn't show any error, we are printing this line execution continues since both hashes are equivalent. In line 30 I am having another subheading preparing data for clustering, and the remaining code, whatever code is there, remaining code is there in the slide, everything we have discussed while we were learning k-means clustering. So I am not going to go into the details of the code. So in line 33 we are starting an R code chunk using 3 backticks. So in line 33 I have 3 backticks and the name of this particular R code chunk is reproduce, REPROD, and I have given an option eval equal to true. By default this particular option is set as true. That means that whatever code is written within this R code will be evaluated and the results will be printed. Suppose you are setting eval equal to false, then the R markdown will not, when you execute it, it will not evaluate the R code within this R code chunk. So there are several options like this, like catch, message, all these options are there. We'll see that also in detail in the subsequent slides. So we are setting the seed as 123, line number 34. We are loading all.mammals.milk columns 2 to 6. The first column is the name of the name of each of the animals. We don't want that to do k-means clustering, so we are loading columns 2 to 6 in input, and we'll print head of input. That data frame will print head of input. We are closing that R code chunk. Next in line 39 we are having the next subheading applying k-means clustering. Then from 40 to 44 you have another R code chunk called clust. In that we are loading the library cluster, calling the function k-means, and we are loading the value of that clustering object into class, and we are printing that clustering object. So you will see all the centroids, everything, all details if you remember will be printed when you execute this. Next again in line number 46 you have some R code chunk. You have a R markdown text. That is, here we have k-means clustering with three clusters and 20 initial random starts. So that is just for the understanding of the reader. And then 48 we have another subheading, and from 49 to 52 you have another R code chunk. It is named as visual 1. So we are loading library facto extra, and we are just plotting the graph using fvis_nb class. So after this R code, when you execute this, that particular graph will be printed. Here again we have the continuation of sample.rmd file. In line number 54 I am printing an R markdown text. It is obvious from the plot that the within cluster sum of squares is optimal at 4. So that will be a continuation of the result of the previous chunk. So the previous chunk was for visualization. A graph will be printed for that, and this is for this particular markdown text is for understanding the graph. In line number 56 I am beginning another subheading called visualizing the clusters. So in line 58 I have started an R code chunk called visual 2, In that I'm calling the function fs underscore cluster. In line 62 again we have another subheading, saving the workspace. Now this particular code is, we have not discussed it previously. So in line 63 I am starting an R code chunk called save, and you can see 4 options there. Echo equal to true. Echo equal to true, it will be set by default. That value will be true even if you don't write anything. So that means that the code that you are printing, you are entering within this R code chunk should be echoed, should be also printed in the output document. Eval equal to true means it should be evaluated and the output should be printed in the .html file. Then catch equal to false. Now catch equal to false means that if you set catch equal to true, then it will use the catched values. Several values will be taken from the catched values. So each time if you want fresh results, then you should give catch equal to false. Message equal to false means if you use the function message, then that the message that you are giving within that function should be printed to the R console and not to the document, not to the output document. So if you set message equal to false, whatever messages that you are printing will not be printed to the output file. Instead it will be printed in the R console. Then within that R code chunk I have written the function in line 64 save, and I have written file equal to sample space dot r data. Now this sample space dot r data is a workspace which helps us to store all the data that we used in this particular document. So the data that we used in this particular document is all.mammals.milk.1956, which is the initial data set. Then we used another data frame df, then we use another data frame input. So all these data will be stored in sample space dot r data, so that next time if you load this workspace, these data sets will be automatically loaded to your R console. It will be loaded into RStudio. So to do that, we are saving everything into sample space dot r data, and the file name, I am storing the file name to a variable f name. And just for the understanding of the reader, in line number 66 we are printing message paste saved f name. So it will print saved f name is sample space dot r data. This message, since we have set message equal to false, it will be printed to the R console. Then since I want this message also to be printed in the output document, which is a .html file, I am giving the function print paste saved f name. So saved sample space dot r data will also be printed in the .html file. So that is this particular .rmd sample.rmd file. Now we'll see the output of this file. Notice that in sample.rmd we end the nettar analysis by saving the R workspace. Now this is specifically called milestone documentation. That is, we can start additional analysis anytime from the saved workspace. So I already mentioned that all the data frames and data sets will be saved in the R workspace. So anytime you want to do some additional analysis, all these will be loaded from the R workspace, and this saves time. This is called milestone documentation. Further, we are checking the data provenance. The cryptographic hash of the file confirms that the work that starts from a file with the same name is in fact starting from the same data. The data scientists can safely start their analysis on the saved workspace and have documentation that allows them to confirm that a workspace file they are using is in fact one produced by this version of the preparation steps. So all these milestone documentation steps saves time. If you want to execute sample.rmd file, you have to click on the option knit, which is on the top of the sample.rmd file. It is just next to the search button, that is in between search and settings. So press knit. There will be 3 options: knit to HTML, knit to Word, knit to PDF. I chose knit to HTML, so I will be getting sample.html file. So I couldn't fit the whole output into the single slide, so I have pasted sample.html as parts. So in this first part you can see that the main title is printed in bold and bigger font size, that is k-means clustering example is the title. The author name is written next. Next is the date on which this document sample.rmd was created. After that you can see the first subheading, loading data and packages. The first R code chunk is pretty printed and the font is different from the remaining R markdown text, and it is given in a grey background. The code is given in a grey background, so it is pretty printed. And the output of head of all.mammals.milk is included immediately next to the code. After that we will have the next subheading, checking data provenance. Again we have the corresponding next R code chunk where we are checking the digest. So there we had a code paste, check that date, that is evaluated, and the output result is printed, check that Saturday April 4, etc. After that the R code chunk is continued, data frame is created, then we are checking the digest and stop if not. All those parts are again pretty printed. Now since the digests were the same, execution continues since both the hashes are equivalent, that markdown text will be printed. So as a continuation of sample.html, next subheading is preparing data for clustering. So we had a markdown text there, producing reproducible work using set.c, that will be printed. After that you have a pretty printed R code chunk, and we had printed we had the code head of input, so that particular data frame will be printed. The head of that data frame will be printed as the result. After that next subheading, applying k-means clustering. The next R code chunk is pretty printed. The result of that R code chunk is the clustering object. So you have a k-means clustering with 3 clusters and 20 initial random starts. After that the next subheading is visualizing the optimal number of clusters. Corresponding R code chunks will be printed, will be pretty printed. So when you run the code fvis_nb clust input k-means method equal to within cluster sum of squares, remember you will get this particular graph as the output of the evaluation of that code fvis_nb clust. So when you look at the code, it is obvious from the plot that within cluster sum of squares is optimal at value 4. Next we have the next subheading, visualizing the clusters. Again we have a function for plotting a graph, fvis_cluster plus data equal to input, hash fvis_cluster helps in visualization. Now this particular hash value, hash fvis_cluster helps in visualization, is a comment. So whatever you write within the R code chunk with hash, with the symbol hash, forms the R comment. That will be the comment. This is the output graph for the previous R code chunk, that was fvis_cluster. We had a function there. So this is the resultant graph. After that we have the last subheading, that is saving the workspace. There as the last 2 line you have message and print. So the first one, since we had set message equal to false, we know that the message given within that function will not be printed in this document. Instead it will be printed within the R console. So this is where it will be printed. You can see this in the bottom left hand side corner of your R console. There are 4 options: console, terminal, compile, PDF and R markdown. Within R markdown you can see that this particular message is printed, saved sample space.r data. Then you have the final print statement, print paste saved fname within this R code chunk. The output of that particular print statement will be printed in this output document. So this is how the messages will be printed. So this is your sample.html file. So these are some useful knitr options which you can specify within your R code chunk. The first one is catch. We have already seen this. It controls whether the results are cached. With catch equal to false, which is the default, code chunk is always executed. With catch equal to true, the code chunk isn't executed if valid catch results are available from the previous runs. Next option is echo. It controls whether source code is copied into the document. With echo equal to true, which is the default, pre-formatted code is added to the document. With echo is equal to false, code isn't echoed. Useful when you only want to display the results. Next option is eval. It controls whether the code is evaluated. The eval equal to true, the code is executed. If it is set as false, it is not evaluated. Next one is message. Set message equal to false to direct R message commands to the console running R instead of to the document. Next option is results. It controls what's to be done with R output. Usually you don't set this option and the output is intermingled with the code. Last one is tidy. Controls whether the source code is reformatted before being printed. You almost always want to set tidy equal to false, which is the default, as the current version of Nittar often breaks code due to mishandling of R comments when reformatting. Now, in order to create R markdown files containing LaTeX code, you have to install certain packages. So initially, to run LaTeX files, you have to install TinyTex using the following commands in RStudio. That is install .packages TinyTex, then TinyTex ::install _TinyTex, then quit and reopen RStudio and try TinyTex : is _TinyTex. Now this should return true. If it returns false, then that means that you have to uninstall TinyTex and reinstall it, and again check this command is _TinyTex until it returns true. Now I had some initial troubles while installing TinyTex, so I also installed MikTeX and also Sumatra PDF. Both of them are optional. Both of them are free. You can download and install them. So only after I installed MikTeX and TinyTex, my compiled to PDF started working. Now Sumatra PDF also I had installed that. Then the R document LaTeX markdown should be saved with .rnw extension. So earlier we had saved normal R markdown files with .rmd extension. Here we have to use .rnw extension. To create a new LaTeX markdown file, in RStudio choose File, New File, and click on the option RSweep. Instead of R markdown, click on the option RSweep. So this is a .rnw document that I have created. I named it as trial.rnw. You can see, if you notice the code within that, it is typical LaTeX file: document class, article, use package, graphics, begin document, then sweep ops, concordance equal to true. Now all these things will be by default present in your .rnw file. So document class, begin, sweep ops, and end document, line number 26 end document will be there by default in all .rnw files. Then the remaining part from /title, that is line number 7, I had keyed in. I just chose one sample LaTeX file in the internet and I pasted it there. That is introduction to LaTeX, author's name, make title, begin, and begin abstract. Line number 12, I have begin abstract, 13th abstract text goes here, 14 end abstract, and so on. So we have some LaTeX code. So next what you have to do is you have to click on compile PDF. If you click on compile PDF, the .rnw document will be evaluated, it will be compiled, and you will get the corresponding LaTeX file. This is the output LaTeX file. You can see introduction, section introduction, then we had a subsection. Section introduction is there in line number 16, that is printed there. Then in line number 22 we have subsection, so that subsection is printed. Then we had a section called conclusion in line 24, that is printed there. So it is a typical LaTeX PDF output. There is yet another way to type in code in the .rnw document. That is, you can again separate it into R code chunk and text, markdown text. So whenever you create a .rnw file, I've already mentioned that document class begin document sweep ops concordance equal to true and /n document will be there by default. The remaining part you can create in a similar way to .rmd file. I'll tell you how. If you notice in line number 5, I have the first R markdown text, which is first block. So I am just writing first block, and in line number 6, instead of giving 3 backticks, I have given 2 open brackets, 2 angular brackets, 2 angular open brackets. I have written the name of this block, R code chunk, that is block 1. Then I am closing the angle brackets and writing equal to. This is equivalent to writing 3 backticks followed by curly braces and R code chunk name. So this is equivalent to that. So in R and W documents, if you want to create R code chunk, you have to write 2 angular brackets, open angular brackets, 2 close angular brackets, and equal to. Within that you have to write the R code chunk name. And now you can end this R code chunk using the @ symbol. So in line 8 I have written the @ symbol. This is how you open and close an R code chunk in a sweep document. Then within that you can write whatever code you want to write. Next, in line number 10 I have written the next block, that is some markdown text. Again I am starting another code chunk, block 2 equal to, I have written some code 5 plus 3 and I have written @ symbol. Then by line number 15, that part will already be there in all R and W documents. Now when I compile to PDF, this is my output PDF file. You can see that the first block, that text is printed, then the code is printed as 1 plus 2 in the output PDF. Then next, before printing next block, that evaluation result is printed. Then the next R markdown text is printed, code is printed, and the corresponding result is printed in the output PDF. So this is your another way to write R code chunks in .rnw document. Here we'll discuss how to write effective comments. So R's comment style is simple. Everything following a hash symbol until the end of a line is a comment and is ignored by the R interpreter. So whenever you want to write the comment within an R code chunk, just start with the hash symbol, space, and then you can start writing your comment. Till the end of the line it is a comment. So this is an example code comment listing. This is from your textbook, Practical Data Science with R. These are some general rules that will help you to write good comments. Good comments include what the function does, what types arguments are expected to be, limits of domain, why you should care about the function, and where it's from. Of critical importance are any note well or noted below or to-do notes. It's vastly more important to document any unexpected features or limitations in your code than to try to explain the obvious. Because our variables don't have types, you may want to document what types of arguments you are expecting. It's critical to know if a function works correctly on lists, data frame rows, vectors, and so on. So these are the things you need not worry about while writing your comments. The first point is you need not worry about pretty ASCII art formatting. It's enough that the comments are there and it is readable. Formatting it into a beautiful block just makes the comment harder to maintain and decreases the chance of the comment being up to date. Next point is anything we see in the code itself. You need not write what is obvious. There's no point repeating the name of the function, saying it takes only one argument, and so on. We don't bother recording the author or date the function was written. These facts, though important, are easily recoverable from your version control system with commands like git blame. The standard way to format document R functions is in separate .rd files in a package structure. So our package system is too specialized and toilsome to use in regular practice. For formal code documentation, we have to use NITA that we have already seen. Here in this listing you can see a useless comment. The function name is given as the first line, add1. If you look at the code, it is very obvious that the function name is add1. The last comment is purpose. Purpose adds 1. The argument is also given as the second last comment, x. All these things are obvious from the code itself. Further, this comment has been pretty printed. All these things are unnecessary. So it is a useless comment. Doesn't give us any more information. On the right hand side, in the second listing, you can see that there is a comment which says adds 1. However, the function actually adds 2. So this is worse than a useless comment. Now we learn how to ensure version control of your projects using GitHub. To do that, initially we have to install GitHub in our local machine. So based on your operating system, you have to install GitHub. I installed GitHub desktop in my Windows machine. So next we have to create an account in github.com. I'm sure most of you would have already done these steps. Next we have to create a new repository in your account in GitHub. Then open RStudio. In Tools, Global Options, Git/svn. Insert the path for git.exe in your local machine. So if you are using GitHub for Windows, git.exe may not be in your path. You might have some difficulty finding it in your program files. So in Windows 10, it appears to be in C:/users, username, app data, local, GitHub. In that path only I could find git.exe. I was having trouble there. That's why I included this for your information. So once you include this path in that Tools, Global Options, Git/svn, restart RStudio. Now you can create file, new project, version control, Git. Enter the repository URL from your github.com account. Project directory name will be autofilled. Enter the location where the directory should be stored in your local machine. Now the detailed steps of how to do this will be shared with you as a video. So if you look at that, you will understand it in detail. So I created a new Git project in my local machine. The name of the project is test. It has the same name as the repository that I created in my GitHub account. So I created a new project called test in drive F of my machine. You can see the path f:/r projects, and this is the new R console for my project, and these are the initial files within the project test. So now that we have created a Git project called test, we have to add files to this project test. So I created a new R script called cluster.r. In that file I added the code, the same code that we did to do k-means clustering. Remember we had done some coding in sample.rmd, the markdown file. All the code part of that I included in cluster.r. I compiled it and saved the workspace. I also created an R markdown file called sample.rmd, which is exactly the same as the sample.rmd file that we saw earlier. Next I compiled it and also got the output in HTML format, so that is sample.html. You can see that all those files are now included in the files in F, that is cluster.r, sample.rmd, samplespace.rdata, which is the workspace, and sample.html. Now it will be shown in on top, that is Git. On top you can see that the sample.rmd is selected, then sample.html, samplespace.rdata. Actually cluster.r will also appear there, but before taking the snapshot I had I had pushed it in my Git repository. That's why it's not being shown here. So sample.rmd and sample.html is displayed there to be pushed to my GitHub account, GitHub repository. So next you have to click on the files to commit. So I am going to commit just sample.rmd and sample.html. I don't want to push samplespace.rdata because it will consume more space. So I want only sample.rmd and sample.html. So I will check on that. After that you have to click on commit button. So press commit. So these are the steps for committing files to GitHub repository. So when you press on commit button, you can see a new window to review changes. This is the window where you can review the changes. So I had already uploaded sample.rmd and sample.html along with cluster.r once. Now here I have made some changes to sample.rmd so that I wanted to show it to you how to upload it in the Git repository. So now all the changes that I made here are shown in this in the bottom window. Next, enter a commit message. Now you have to enter a commit message, that is mandatory. So here I have entered a message, silhouette distance measure in sample.rmd. So if you remember, in sample.rmd I had used within cluster sum of squares, WSS. Instead of that I used silhouette distance. So that is the change that I made, and I am entering the commit message as silhouette distance measure in sample.rmd. After that, again hit commit. The following window will pop up, that is how many files will be changed, how many insertions and deletions will be made. So and the commit message, all that will be displayed as the git commit in the git commit window. Then you have to close the pane. Next, push the next press the push option in the review changes pane, so that these files will be pushed to your GitHub repository. So you have an option called push in your review changes pane. You have to click on that push button so that it will be pushed to your GitHub repository. Now when I pressed on the push option, I got the following error. It is unable to read ASPAS response from our postback ASPAS. I got this error. When I googled it up, I found that this error is very common. As a workaround, in RStudio, click on the Tools menu and select Shell to open an external terminal, or in Tools menu choose the option Terminal. That will be the internal the terminal associated with the RStudio. That will be internal to RStudio. The other one will be an external shell. So either of these options you can follow, either Tools Shell or Tools Terminal. Now in the shell, run the following command: git space push -u origin master. It might ask you for your Git username and password. Supply this information. Make sure it is correct. Your Git repository, Git account, username and password you will have to enter. Then you can close the window. Now make some more edits in the same file so that you have a new content to push. Click on the push button in RStudio, and this time the push should work. It worked for me, and hopefully it will also work for you if you encounter the same error. Now if you did not encounter any errors as I did, then your push should work properly, and all the files should be that you have uploaded, you have pushed, should appear in your GitHub repository. So this is the view of my GitHub repository. You can see that I have a project called test in my GitHub repository, and these are the files that are included in this GitHub repository, that is cluster.r, sample.rmd, sample.html and test.r project. So you can see that the time at which I have done all these commits, and you can see all the commit messages that I made. So this is the view of my GitHub repository after the push. So in the previous slide you saw a view of my GitHub repository. Now from that, from the project test, suppose I want to find how many different times I had committed sample.rmd, and during each commit of the file, what are the changes that I made to that file. Then we can click on sample.rmd in my test project. You can see a pane like this, and the contents of sample.rmd will be displayed, and there you can see an option called history. You have to click on it. So when you click on history, it will display the history for sample.rmd. That is, first I had committed sample.rmd on April 4th by giving the commit message adding sample.rmd. That was my first commit. After that I made some change, and with the second commit message check I had submitted it after that. Subsequently I had committed it by making some changes with the commit message silhouette distance measure in sample.rmd. So that was my last commit. So this is how you can see the history for a particular file. Now you can even see what specific changes were made during each commit. Here I clicked on silhouette distance measure in sample.rmd. That is the last commit of sample.rmd. Now it will show what all changes were made to sample.rmd when compared to the previous commit. So here it has highlighted with green the change that I have made. Specifically in line number 51, I have changed method fis underscore nbclust input k-means method equal to wss. That was the original document. In the last commit I changed it to silhouette. I changed the method from wss to silhouette. That is the change made in the new commit. Further, I also made a change in line number 56. I guess I just pressed a space and then a backspace or something. So that is also highlighted there in green and red. So whatever deletions I have made is shown in the red ink, and whatever insertions I have made is shown in the green ink. So this is how you maintain the history of documents using GitHub. So these are some of the commands in Git. For instance, git init will create a new repository, empty repository, or if you run it from an existing repository, it will reinitialize it. Git add can be used to add a file to an existing repository. Git commit is used to commit. That is, if you have made some changes in some files and you want to commit it. Remember, we had pressed on the option commit. In order, you can equivalently do it by giving this command git commit, and you can give the message, commit message, along with this command. Then git status, log, diff, checkout are the other different commands. So these commands will be the equivalent of whatever you do with the RStudio. So if you want to execute these commands, git commands, in your RStudio terminal and see the results, open Git version control project that you have created in your local machine. In RStudio, you have to open the Git version control project. So in my case, I'll go to F, R project, and my GitHub project is named test. Within that, I can see a file test.rproj. If you click on that, automatically the project will open up in RStudio. In RStudio tools terminal, type the following git commands. So the first command that I keyed in is git init. This will reinitialize the existing git repository for the test project. Then the second command that I keyed in is git config -- list. So this command will list all the users in the system as well as their repository. So in this case, I am the only user and this is the only project that I have. So all this information will be listed using config command. Now suppose I want to add a new file to my project test. So I am going to create a new rsweave markdown document called latexsample.rnw. To do this, remember, you have to first choose file, new file, rsweave. So if you choose that, a new untitled document will open. You can key in all these details. After that, save as, give the file name. In my case, I gave latex sample. It will automatically get saved with .rnw extension. Now these files will be added to your test project, Git project. So you can see those files in Git project test. That is latexsample.rnw.tex.pdf.concordance.txt and all that, log files and everything. So suppose you want to push all these files to your GitHub repository in the cloud. First we have to move it to the staging area. You have to select them and move it. Remember, we had selected this before committing. So we are telling Git that in the next commit we want to add all these files to our GitHub repository. To do that, you have an equivalent command called git add -a. So this will tell Git that you want to move these files to the staging area so that in the next commit they will be added to your GitHub repository. So if you give git add -a, then all these new additions will be added to your GitHub staging area. Otherwise, you can even give git add -a and a specific file name. This will add only that particular file name to the staging area, so that only that will be committed during next push. So using the previous command git space add -a, I had moved all the new files to the staging area so that it can be committed. So once I have added it to the staging area, the next command is I have to commit it. So remember we had chosen the commit option. Equivalently you can type in the command git commit, and remember we also entered a commit message. So you can enter the commit message along with this command git commit. So git commit -- message equal to sweep. Here my commit message is sweep. If you want to enter a new long message, then you can give it within double quotes. Say this is my new commit. That if that is your commit message, you have to give it within double quotes. So here in this case my commit message is sweep. If you press enter, then it will show how many files are changed. Which are the files that are going to get committed. So here you can see the names of all 6 files that will get committed. After that we have to press on push, the option push. Equivalently you have a command git push -u origin master. So if you type the command and press enter, again you can see an error, cannot spawn R post back as pass. This error was there previously also. However, if you correctly key in your username and password for github.com, all these files that you were about to commit will get committed, and it will get pushed in your GitHub repository. So in this slide it talks about choosing a project directory structure. So in this table you can see a possible project directory structure. So it can be categorized as data files, scripts, derived files and results. So they also discuss which all files should be uploaded, should be included in version control. That is, it should be pushed to your GitHub repository, and which should not be pushed. So initially if you talk about data files, this is the original downloaded data, say .csv files. Now this directory must usually be excluded from version control because the file size will be large. Scripts are where we store all code related to analysis of the data. That should certainly be pushed to your GitHub cloud. It should be included in version control. Derived data, where we store intermediary results that are derived from data and scripts. This directory must also be excluded from source control. Now results, they are similar to derived, but this directory holds smaller later results, and it is advisable that this is also included in version control. So once you have developed your R project and you want to deploy it in your organization, you might encounter several challenges. R is one of the most preferred languages for creating machine learning models. However, most of us lack the knowledge on deploying R models in the production environment of an organization and on making it available to users who can use the model without having R installed on their system. In general, Python and R are by far the most popular languages for ML applications, but production models are rarely deployed in those languages for various reasons, including speed. Porting an R model into a production language like C++ or Java is complicated and often results in reduced performance of the original model. There are various methods for deploying R projects. This table shows several methods. The first one is batch, that is, data is brought into R. The model is developed. After that, the data is written back out. This is an extension of what we do with the test data. We bring in the data set, split it up into training and test sets, build our model using the training set and test it out on the test data. Next one is cross-language linkage. That is, R supplies answers to queries from another language like C, C++, Python, Java and so on. R is designed with efficient cross-language calling in mind. Next one is services. R can be set up as an HTTP service to take new data as an HTTP query and respond with results. Next option is exporting. Now in this case, the data scientist can export the model and the specification for the code to evaluate the model. And the production engine can implement the model evaluation in the language of their choice like SQL, Java, C++ and so on. Another option is PMML, that is Predictive Model Markup Language. It's a shared XML format that many modeling packages can export to and import from. Now we'll see an example of how to export or deploy an R project into PML, that is Predictive Model Markup Language. So I'm going to do this example of exporting or deploying R research to PMML by creating a new repository in github.com. So I'll give a name of my to my new repository as Random Forest. Next I'll open RStudio and correspondingly I'll create a new project in RStudio by clicking File, New Project, Version Control Git, and enter the repository URL from my github.com account. Project directory name will be autofilled. Enter the location where the directory should be stored in your local machine. I gave it as f:/r projects as in the previous case when I created test project. Now create a new R script to generate a random forest model. For training a random forest model, we need training data. Kaggle website provides some nice datasets. We can use the Titanic dataset with features describing Titanic passengers and labels indicating whether they survived or not, that is 1 or 0. The model will receive a passenger set of features and return their survival probability. The Titanic dataset can be downloaded as a CSV file from Kaggle. So here I have displayed the first 6 rows in train.csv. Initially the train.csv file was read into a data frame called titanic.train. So the first 6 rows, if you notice, you can see the first column is passenger ID, next one is whether the passenger has survived or not, next one is the passenger class, then the name of the passenger, sex, age, then there are few more other attributes like patch, ticket, fare, cabin, embarked, etc. So these are the various columns inside titanic.train. Remember that I had created a new Git version control project called Random Forest in my local machine in the path f:/r projects. And within this project, I'll store my train.csv, test.csv files which is downloaded from kaggle.com. Next, I'm going to create my first R script called rf.r to create the random forest model. Inside this rf.r, what I'm doing is I'm just installing the package random forest. I'm loading the library random forest. Next, after I already have train.csv in this project. I'm loading it into a data frame called titanic.train. In titanic.train, in the data frame, we have a column called survived, which shows whether the corresponding passenger has survived or not. If he has survived, we'll give the value 1. If not, value will be 0. So that will be converted to it will be converted to a factor using the function as.factor. Next, we are going to build a random forest object, that is titanic.rf. Using the function random forest, it will return a random forest object. So the response variable is survived and the predictors are all the other columns in the titanic.train data frame except the columns name, cabin and ticket. So the data is titanic.train. After that, we are printing the first 6 rows of titanic.train using the command head titanic.train. Then we are going to do some predictions. For that, we'll use the information of a particular passenger, that is passenger in column in row number 3. So the passenger in row number 3, we are going to predict if that passenger has survived or not. So for prediction, we'll use the function predict. Titanic.rf is our random forest object that we just created in line number 6. We have created it just now. So titanic.rf, the data is, we have to use the third row, titanic.train 3. Then you can use you can get the output as votes or probability. Remember, in random forest we'll generate several, like 400 to 500 trees will be generated. Based on the output from the trees, we can either have the predictions as votes. So how many of these trees are predicting that this particular passenger will survive? That will be given as vote underneath the value 1, and underneath the value 0, how many are predicting that this passenger will not survive. So either it can be vote, or it can be, as shown in line number 12, it can also be probability values. How many trees are predicting that? What is the probability that this passenger will survive, and what is the probability that the passenger will not survive? So this is rf.r, this the first script in my random forest GitHub project. Now in this slide we'll see the output of each of the predict statements in rf.r. The first one will give us the prediction in terms of votes. So our random forest will generate several hundreds of trees, and we'll just check the output of each tree to find how many trees votes that this particular passenger will survive, and how many trees are voting that the passenger will die. So actually in this particular random forest model, it has generated 500 trees, and if you see the output of that predict statement, 165 out of 500 are predicting that the passenger will not survive, and 335 are predicting that the passenger will survive. Next, we are using the option probability instead of vote in the next predict statement, predict titanic.rf probability. There we will get, instead of votes, we will get the probability value. That is 165 divided by 500 will give you the probability 0.33, and 335 divided by 500 will give you the probability 0.67. Now we are going to convert the model that we have generated. We have generated a random forest model. It is stored in the object titanic.rf. We are going to convert titanic.rf, which we have developed, into a PMML object. So to do that, we have to load the library PMML. After that, use the function PMML titanic.rf. Remember, titanic.rf is the random forest object which we have developed. So now if you see the output, now converting tree 1 to PMML, tree 2 to PMML, tree 3 to PMML, and so on until the last tree, which is tree 500 to PMML. Every single tree which were developed by a random forest model will be converted to PMML objects. So I am storing all these conversion steps of my random forest to PMML in another R script file called rf_2_PMML. So in that, the first line is install.packages PMML. Next one is loading the library. Next I am converting my R random forest object titanic.rf to PMML, and I am completing the rendering to PMML using the function save XML. So if you notice in the in my files, random forest project, I have the following files: train.csv and test.csv were files that data files that I downloaded from Kaggle. The other two, the rf.r and rf_2pmml.r, are the two R scripts that I have written. The first one, rf.r, to create the random forest model, the next one for conversion. Then as the output file, I got titanic_rf.pmml and also rf.xml. And this is the view of my GitHub repository that in the cloud. So I have pushed the files rf.r, rf_2pmml.r, titanic_rf.pmml, train.csv and test.csv. So this is how we export an R project to PMML. I hope it is clear to you.